The book Eating Animals has been lying around my house for the last 5 to 6 years. We got it as a gift from my Aunt Carla, or better known in my house as the hippie. She was always a person I had both admired but feared, both for her enthusiasm to sort of bring light to things that we had never thought of, but also scary because she did bring light to the things we didn't think of when didn't want to think of in my house, really. I had never read this book, both for the admirance and fear that I had for my Aunt Carla. I was curious of what was so important that she wanted me to read, but also of how that might force me to react. See, it's not like it's not like my family is all that conservative or anything, but we were common and we were as like we were supposed to be, but not really questioning a lot of what we did or what we ate because why should we? Back in our hometown in Ecuador, it was just you don't ask those things, you just do them. So I had never gotten to reading the book, but since we did now in AP Lang, the first thing I read was the back, the little intro that they give you, and this is what it says. Like many young Americans, Jonathan Safran Foer spent much of his teenage and college years oscillating between enthusiastic carnivore and occasional vegetarian. The first thing I thought was, yikes, I'm like most young Americans. When I was in middle school, I gave up meat because of a video we watched in my world history class, and I actually gave it up for about 4 years. Well, and by meat, I really mean red meat because when I told my Quiteña mom that I wanted to give up all meat, she almost had a heart attack. Her first reaction was, Lucia, I've eaten meat my whole life every day. I don't know how to make vegetarian food. So, well, I was a half vegetarian. I still ate chicken and fish, but I still take pride in saying that, well, I didn't eat red meat for about 4 years. So, honestly, this book already started to impact me the way that I both feared and hoped it would. It once again reminded me of the hard realities that I've already learned in so many videos and classes, but like everyone else, I've been trying to suppress, especially now that I started eating meat again in Colombia because one, it's so much harder to avoid it, and despite my mom's worst fears, I did get anemia. Well, one of the chapters I read was one holding all of Jonathan Foer's definitions of a lot of words commonly known in the animal eating consumption industry. And so I'm going to read to you some of the ones that most interested me and caught my mind. The first was human. I think this was a really important word because it brings to light a lot of what we think about animal industry, like what's the difference between them and us. And so here's what Foer says. Humans are the only animals that have children on purpose. Keep in touch or don't, care about birthdays, waste and lose time, brush their teeth, feel nostalgia, scrub stains, have religions or in political parties and laws, wear keepsakes, apologize years after an offense, whisper, fear themselves, interpret dreams, hide their genitalia, shave, bury time capsules, and can choose not to eat something for reasons of conscience. The justification for eating animals and for not eating them are often identical. We are not them. I thought this was a very interesting definition also because look into Google, Webster, or any dictionary, and the first thing you get is that humans are Homo sapiens. They have 2 legs, 2 arms, whatever. Like all of those scientific things that don't really say and envelop all that humans really are. And I think this was because of the detail, because of the small things, gave a very good description as to what really makes us different from animals. And so, yes, obviously there are differences. But also you see that it's sort of those superficial things. Those little things that make us different, not the big things. In the end, we're all living creatures in that same idea. The next definitions that, well, were both funny, but also kind of serious, were the ones about free range and fresh. This is what he says about free range. Applied to meat, eggs, dairy, and every now and then even fish. Tuna on the range. The free range label is bullshit. It should prove no more peace of mind than all natural, fresh, or magical. The definition of fresh was More bullshit. According to the USDA, fresh poultry has never had internal temperature below 26 degrees or above 40 degrees Fahrenheit. Fresh chicken can be frozen, thus the oxymoron fresh frozen, and there is no time component to food freshness. Pathogen-infested, feces-splattered chicken can technically be fresh, cage-free, and free-range and sold in supermarket legally. The shit does not need to be rinsed off first. So I think this was also really great because one, it's like a sarcastic and funny way to explain things. It gets you interested, like just reading something. Like more bullshit already immediately wants you to think like, wow. And it also brings to light that these are things that we commonly accept. Like we see this in our chicken and in our food whenever we go to the supermarket, and we don't really question it. We say, oh, free range, oh, that's so nice. And we imagine those little chickens and cows and sheeps like in the movie Babe or something. And fresh, we also think of a nice prairie and a farm, sort of the ones you see on the pictures, like as in the milk jars and everything. But the truth is that we don't know what those things mean. We assume that they're saying the truth, but the truth can be so like misinterpreted and pulled apart that in what we think we're reading doesn't mean at all what we're actually talking about and what we're actually eating and putting in our mouths. And it's not just about what we're consuming and how it's affecting us, but how the animals are really being treated. So yeah, it really brings into light those kinds of things. The other word that I read was that caught my mind was suffering. Here's what he says. What is suffering? The question assumes a subject that suffers. All the serious challenges to the idea that animals suffer tend to grant the animals feel pain at one level, but not deny them the sort of being, the general mental emotional world or subjectivity that will make this suffering meaningful, analogous to our own. I am not against people eating meat. I think humans are omnivores for a reason because that's how we survived so many years. But we've never eaten animals this way. And I think the main difference between the past and present and why I think so many people have chosen to be vegetarians now is not because it's wrong to eat animals, but because it's wrong for them to go through the process that they go through for us to eat them. An animal's purpose in life isn't to be eaten by us, but we're making it that. We're subjecting animals to this mass suffering simply so that they can sit on a plate in front of us. Before, eating animals meant hunting for them, being interactive, using them as a tool of survival like they use so many other animals or resources. It wasn't a way for us to simply pleasure ourselves. We didn't treat animals as less than animals just so we could eat them. And that brings us to the last word. That was the one that most impacted me of these definitions. Cruelty. Not only the willful causing of unnecessary suffering, but the indifference to it. It's much easier to be cruel than one might think. This really ties it all in a knot. We want to think that the cruel people are the ones putting the birds into the cage, stuffing them together, are the ones who are mistreating them, feeding cows wheat and corn instead of the grass that they need. Just cutting, like burning the beaks of the chickens and the turkeys so that they won't peck each other's eyes out, and ignoring the ones that lie dead after being suffocated by their fellow chickens or birds or whatever. But you see, that is an extreme sense of cruelty, but as it says in the book, it's also cruel for us to not do anything about it. And what bothers me most about this video I'm making and about talking about this is that either way, I had meat today in my lunch. And for a second I did regret it, but I still ate it. And I think that as I read on through this book, I will keep changing my mind about this, and it is going to impact me. But there are still so many people who just ignore the fact. And it's not right to ignore it, and it's not right to treat animals that way. We have no more meaning in life than does a chicken that we're eating. And we shouldn't be subjecting animals to that kind of suffering for our pleasure. I think that's the biggest lesson that humans fail to learn time and time again. We're not the center of the world, but we act like we are, and and there are animals, innocent animals, suffering around us because of that. Well, that's my vlog for today. And so this is really a book I'm enjoying a lot, and I'm excited to continue reading it.